Hello and welcome to Moderate Fantasy Violence, a podcast about 2018 and the hellish nightmarescape in which it sits. It is now, of course, 2019, so at this point we are just turning around, looking over our shoulder to give it one last, probably obscene gesture before strolling away into the distance. I'm Nick.
And I'm Alistair.
And we are here for our amazingly third annual year in review episode thing, during which we will, in our two main areas of TV and film, talk briefly-ish about what kind of year it's been, and then tell you each of our top 5 items in that category, our worst one, and then attempt to combine them into some sort of unified MFV top 3. Before recording, Alistair said he thinks it might be a bit harder than usual to combine them this year, so you never know, maybe there'll finally be an actual argument. Before the fighting begins, Alistair, seen anything else good lately?
I have a recommendation for our listeners. It's a caveated recommendation.
Is it something you don't actually like?
It's not something I don't actually like. It's something that I'm on some other thing may not be actually very good.
that's a thin line, but okay.
Yeah, but I have been enjoying it. I've been recently watching the Netflix TV show Altered Carbon. And as a big fan of the cyberpunk genre, I really am liking the show. Nick can testify that I'm literally wearing a t-shirt right now that says cyberpunk on it and has a punked up R2-D2. So.
Yes, all of those things are somehow true. Yeah, I've seen trailers for this, and yeah, all the reviews were sort of a bit, it's fine. So I just sort of concluded I didn't like Cyberpunk enough to spend 10 hours watching it.
Yeah, I mean, referring to it wittily on Twitter as cyberpunk gun porn. That's basically what it is. It's the cyberpunk show in which, no cyberpunk cliche is left unobserved. There's a gritty detective who's a sort of freedom fighter from the past who's been resurrected in the far future. Well, he's from our future, but the current thing's past. He's been resurrected to solve, a murder, so he goes around, kicking in doors and hitting people in the head through various realities, real, virtual, with cyberpunk guns and things like that. It's got some interesting stuff about, the nature of self, in the fact that in this cyberpunk future you can swap between bodies, or what they refer to as sleeves, by having your consciousness digitally transferred from body to body. So there's interesting things with different people cropping up at different times in different bodies, including the main character who died in his past and has now been digitally resurrected in a different body. So there's some interesting stuff there. It's got some really well-realised, futuristic, sort of cityscape. They've got all the cyberpunk themes of kind of, inequality, the fact that, is technology taking away your humanity, resistance against oppression. It's got all the cyberpunk stuff you like, but it might just be a bit rubbish, I think, as a show. But I'm actually enjoying it as something that's kind of lightweight to take, to take my mind off, the horrors of reality in the run-up to Christmas.
Yeah, it does look like they very much spent a bumload of money on it. It does look like it's going to be quite an impressive bit of realised cyberpunk. So, I definitely see how if I was more big into the genre, that would definitely be something I'd want to take in, a big, expensive cyberpunk series from one of the big current broadcasters of the time. Yeah. So,
if you're doing dry January and losing the will to live, or you're, just generally upset and sort of a bit trodden down by, the never-ending greyness of January, consider escaping with some cyberpunk gun porn. That's my recommendation.
Is cyberpunk generally known for just uplifting escapist qualities?
Well, compared to reality right now.
That's the point we've reached.
Nick, anything to save us from suicide?
As luck would have it, yes. I've been reading Our Child of the Stars by Stephen Cox, who, full disclosure, is someone me and Alistair both know in real life from our writing group, and who is a very nice chap. But also, fortunately, his book is really good. It's a sort of literary sci-fi book. It's about an alien child who falls to Earth and is adopted by a human couple, and he soon goes on to prove himself to be a lovely little boy who becomes part of their family and brings them the family units they've been craving. And of course, there's a whole covering him up. The government are looking for him, but where did he come from? And what if they come after him as well? Type thing going on. It's a really good book. It's a very, as I think he said that other people have commented, it's a very kind, uplifting book. It's very focused on the power of love, the power of family, how we should probably all just try being nice to each other for once and stop being so cynical. And, it's the sort of thing that often seems to be going down quite well is this going to be a theme as we try and talk about 2018 in summary? Apparently it is, in the sort of world we currently seem to live in. It's a really nice book. I've just finished reading it on my Kindle. I believe the print version is coming out in a couple of weeks from when we're posting this, but the Kindle version, if you're an ebook person, and also I think the audio one, if you receive your books already, is also available now.
As a fan of oral books, Yes, I can confirm that it is available from Audible and I guess other audiobook retailers, and it's read by the same woman who reads the Becky Chambers novels. So if you enjoyed listening to the Becky Chambers novels...
Yeah, Long Way to a Small Angry Planet.
Yeah, the Wayfarer novels.
Yeah. Also good, by the way.
Yeah, so if you've enjoyed Becky Chambers' work and would like a similar science fiction... Well, we'd like another science fiction story set on Earth in the past rather than space in the future, then go get that audiobook.
Yeah, but no, I haven't heard the audiobook, but yeah, the novel itself is a lovely, warm story. If you enjoy sort of literary sci-fi books about, the human side of fantastic stuff, then yeah, it's a lovely book. Stephen's a really good writer. This is his first book. He is a debut novelist, so, you can say you were there relatively early when he goes on to be a literary legend of our times. So yeah, check it out.
First up, we are going to go down our top 5 films of the year and also say what our worst film of the year is. Before that, we're just going to, talk about what it's been like in the cinema in 2018. For films to be eligible for this or TV shows, they had to be on either general or specific release in 2018. If you're an American listener, some of these films might be things that came out at the very end of 2017 in America, but we sometimes get stuff a bit later in Britain. I've also not included films I saw at the London Film Festival that haven't subsequently been released because it's unfair for me to recommend films to you guys that you can't actually go and see. Oh, very hard to see. But other than that, anything's fair game, including stuff that we might not have covered on the podcast. But looking at the year overall, it seems to be, all right, I'd say, cautiously. I mean, there hasn't been any horrendous turkeys. If there were, I probably avoided them. And things that I was worried might have gone badly didn't go badly. So potential for high-profile missteps could have been Avengers Infinity War, that was good. Or Aquaman, at least passable. The other major superhero franchises and big adventure films of the year were also good, like the new Jurassic Park film.
I think, it's been another year where cinema has continued to do roughly what it's done for the previous few years to a semi-competent level. I think it's been, I keep waiting for the next big thing in cinema to actually happen. Because at the moment we seem to be in this weird stage where superheroes...
Still hegemonic.
Superheroes and franchises and or remakes are the primary thing. Everyone's accepted that only Marvel could do cinematic universes, so no one's trying to do that either, really.
Yeah, that's the big learning from 2017.
2016, 2017. The failed cinematic universes of various non-Marvel people.
Yeah, and the only one, I guess, that seems to actually that was limping on, that seems a bit in the dust this year, was a sort of Star Wars cinematic shared universe, which kind of shut down with Solo's disappointing box office performance, and now I think they seem to be just doing the third film in this kind of core trilogy, Episode 9. And obviously they're doing a Star Wars TV show, but I don't think there's any plans to do other, Star Wars stories.
It was interesting, actually, that, I suppose, in terms of trends, this year they released a Star Wars film and it failed to ignite the world.
Yeah.
I think it grossed about the same as Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think.
Yeah.
In fact, internationally, I think it may have been thrashed by Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Which is definitely the third of the 3 Marvel films this year, in every way.
I mean, I thought Solo was kind of forgettably all right. I mean, in some ways it's interesting that for all that certain slightly frustrating ends of the Star Wars fandom might gripe and moan about how the Disney Empire insists on putting, women and minorities into their films, Star Wars went back and made a film about one of the main white dudes from the old films, and it belly flopped quite badly compared to everything else. So maybe there's a lesson there. In fact, to be honest, my other main note about cinema this year is one thing that has changed or developed this year, even if the types of movies haven't changed that much. This seems to have been the year where Hollywood finally acknowledged that there is probably money to be made in, cast diversity or slight cultural diversity. There seems to have been a little bit of a move towards things like Crazy Rich Asians, the rom-com with the entirely Asian cast, Black Panther, of course, The Hate U Give, Love, Simon, actually. A
LGBT high school romance, which is unusual.
Yeah, in fact, it's very unusual, if only because it was, although different ethnicities are definitely finally getting their day in the sun, in mainstream Hollywood action-adventure films, people who are not straight still seem to be a barrier they are terrified to cross.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, I think the general takeaway for most people seems to be the reason that Hollywood is terrified to put a gay character into any film that they expect to, try and make huge amounts of money out of internationally, like big action films, is because they're worried it won't get released or will be somehow publicly scorned in conservative foreign markets.
That seems to be the conventional wisdom, or at least what people report as the conventional wisdom.
Yes, I'm not a Hollywood exec, so I do not know how true that actually is. I know that the amounts of money films are making in China is getting to be a more and more substantial percentage of their box office. I know China is not the most liberal tolerant of nations. So, I don't know. In 2018, it does get a bit wearying, but we're still hearing cast members having to do slightly embarrassed mumbling about how their character is definitely bisexual because there's one bit where their eyes linger on a character of the same sex. Or Fantastic Beasts 2 Crimes of Grindelwald, in which Dumbledore's relationship with Grindelwald was one of the main instigating plot points, and they're only allowed to hint at it very obtusely.
Yeah.
Which is a bit sort of, okay, not only is the inability to actually show gay people on screen kind of embarrassing, it's also really kind of sabotaging this film.
Yeah, no, definitely. One of the trends from this year is, increased diversity, which I think, certainly a good thing. And like you say, we're now seeing certainly like racial diversity, like with films like Black Panther and things like that. And I think I saw on Twitter someone sharing an article which claimed that films starring women made more money in 2018 than films starring men. Wasn't there that? So certainly gender diversity is becoming more and more of a more profitable and more embraced by Hollywood, which is good. And like I say, it's a step forward. It's a progressive step forward. I mean, it is. I know the pace of change in a conservative institution like Hollywood, like conservative with the small c, and sometimes conservative with a capital C institution like Hollywood, the pace of change is painfully slow. And I completely support people who are advocating for more change and faster. But I guess with the rise of things like Netflix and Amazon Prime Video and all the other things offering a galaxy of alternatives, people can find the stuff that they want. They don't have to go and see the latest white straight man action film at the cinema because there's basically nothing else to do on a Friday night. So I think that Hollywood is going to have to embrace diversity if it's in order to survive.
I mean, Hollywood is of course not the most quick to react of beasts. That's one of the ways in which TV can sometimes circle around it a bit. It's very possible, but the reason we're seeing more diverse films in Hollywood now is because some execs concluded in mid-2016, oh, hang on, maybe we should do this. Let's start working on it.
The other interesting trend from this year I noticed in the cinema, I was reminded by this by something you just said, Nick, which is the growing number of Chinese-American co-productions. So in which large films seem to have an American star, but then a prominent Chinese co-star and have some kind of setting in China as well. So there was The Meg this year, starring Jason Statham, in which he headbutts a prehistoric shark.
I didn't see that.
But that obviously, is a Chinese co-production set, a lot of it set near China or in the waters around China. Mile 22, a Mark Wahlberg film in which Mark Wahlberg has to fight his way across Hong Kong, I think it is. So,
There's Pacific Rim 2, wasn't there, this year? Which I've seen, as far as I'm aware, seemed to basically happen entirely because the first one did well in China.
Yeah, which I didn't see that, but yeah. Even I noticed The Happy Time Murders, the Muppets film for grown-ups that came out this year was, I noticed from the logos, I'm pretty sure it was also a Chinese-American co-production. So I guess, there's a closer relationship in cinema between China and America, as China is a rising global power and wants to exert its influence through soft power politics and culture, just as America does. So there might be a trend for the future to watch more Chinese-American co-productions.
Yeah, I did read an article online, again, as ever, it's someone's opinion, and annoyingly I've forgotten who it was, about Aquaman and how Aquaman may well be a film made in light of this is the sort of thing that may well do well in China. Lots of graphics, lots of big exciting fights, lots of sort of high concept, weird fantasy stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not obviously a film that clearly has a lot of Chinese involvement. As far as I know, no Chinese people on screen, but it hasn't been out long enough for me to tell you if that's actually happened. I think it did have quite a strong opening weekend in China, so maybe they've got what they wanted.
Yeah. Maybe.
And this was also the year that the Oscars, in a vague attempt to get people to notice them again, tried to start a Best Popular Film Oscar, and then got roundly mocked on the internet and also quietly accused of sort of soft racism for introducing this just as the first ever black-led superhero film threatens to get a Best Picture nod, and then quietly sort of retracted it again. Which was, I don't know, I mean, if I ran the Oscars, I must admit I might start to think, maybe I should do something about the fact that the films that we cover are not the films the majority of the population cares about, and no one watches our award ceremony anymore.
We talked about the Oscars last year, I think, in the question section for one film when we discussed the Oscars. And it is one of the weird things that, like, Oscar-winning films are not the most popular films of the year, but then again, the most popular films of the year have the rewards of making money. But they're not kind of like the best films of the year because, as everyone points out, almost all the Oscars go to, Hollywood films, or at least like English language films. Maybe a few like British or independent American films creep in, but you can't really objectively say that the Oscars represent the best films that came out in the previous year because there's so many documentaries, foreign language films and whatever that are overlooked. If you want to think what's an objective list of the best films that came out in 2018, I would recommend you go to Mark Kermode's YouTube channel where he lists them because he will be fairly critically neutral and will obviously put an obscure Somali film in at number 2 if it deserves to be there. But also, to be fair, Mark Kermode will also say put Black Panther in at number 3 if it deserves to be there. But I don't think that the Oscars represent what are the best films in a given year. They represent a certain type of film, the type of film that wins Oscars. Films about struggling geniuses or historical moments and things like that. There's just a type of film. There is a reward ceremony that exists to reward the creation of a certain type of film.
But they seem to be increasingly troubled by, I don't know, is there a widening gulf between that type of film and what's actually popular? I mean, when you create a new award and call it Best Popular Film, that seems to be a sort of implicit diss at the films in your other category.
Well, yes, obviously everyone on Twitter went to say, the Oscars want to launch a category called Achievement in Popular Films because every other Oscar is Achievement in Unpopular Films.
Yeah, I just made an obvious Twitter joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a thing that happened this year. I look forward to the next development in the Oscars midlife crisis next year.
I mean, after just trashing the Oscars, I think diversity in the Oscars is important. And for those people I know who pushed hard for diversity in the Oscars and of things like Oscars So White from a couple of years ago, don't get me wrong, I think diversity in the Oscars is important. Lots of people do believe they are the best films of the year, even if I don't. And they should be, a recognition that people of colour or, sort of people of different sexuality or sexual orientations or identities should be represented amongst the big glitzy gong ceremony of the year.
But that doesn't require you to create a popular film category. That just requires that people other than white males make Oscar bait films.
Yes.
Which they have done and managed to win some Oscars.
Yes. But although probably not at the rate that other people do.
But that's still not going to solve the Oscars so no one gives a shit problem.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see which of our films that we, from our top 10 or top 5 lists, end up getting Oscar nominations this year.
Probably not many of them.
Probably not many of mine, but although some of mine also were released in America in 2017, so they're not eligible for the 2019 Oscars.
And on that note, shall we begin listing things?
Shall we begin the list? Right, Nick. Do you want to go first with your 5th favourite film you saw in the cinema in 2018?
Yes, I do. Okay, as I briefly alluded to earlier, my film going this year has been basically entirely based around this podcast, so the sort of films that we cover on this podcast are going to make up quite a lot of this list, and which is why I believe I'm going to start this list with one of the first things we covered on the podcast in 2018. At number 5, it's Molly's Game. A film very much from the Nick Bryan's Preferences school of best listing, but I'm not entirely sure anyone else will put this on their best list, but I enjoy Aaron Sorkin's dialogue quite a lot. And I thought this was, if not a masterpiece, one of his better films in a while. Probably the best thing I've seen from him since The Social Network. And admittedly, that list includes The Newsroom and that weird Steve Jobs film, so it's not exactly a knockdown, drag-out brawl there. But nonetheless, I thought Molly's Game was a fun film, helped by the fact that he had a genuinely towering, charismatic lead in Jessica Chastain, who did do a lot to hold that film through its whole length. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed Molly's Game. And Idris Elba was in it as well, and he's always great. And he, it turns out, does marry to Sorkin's dialogue quite well. So yeah, at number 5, a short homage to the fact that I actually liked the Aaron Sorkin film this year.
Yeah, I liked it as well. It's not on my list, but I did like it, and as you say, it was nice to see Sorkin's back on form after The Newsroom, which was disappointing, especially in its final series. Yeah, it was a great film. I really enjoyed it. Jessica Chastain was excellent. Idris Elba, very good. Michael Cera playing a sort of villain, or at least a morally dubious character, which is him actually playing quite well off type, I thought.
Yeah.
Kevin Costner was good as well, playing the standard Sorkin dad figure.
Yeah, certainly in terms of getting famous people in his films, that was a bit of a high point for Sorkin, wasn't it?
And his directorial debut, and he proved he could direct a film as well as write one. So yeah, that film gets a thumbs up from me.
Okay, cool. So what was your number 5?
My number 5 was, again going back to the beginning of the year, was I, Tonya.
Yes. I hear it's good.
Starring Margot Robbie and Alison Janney. Alison Janney won a Best Supporting Actress Oscar for this film about Tonya Harding, the American ice dancer who was, according to her, once the second most famous person in the world behind Bill Clinton back in the early 90s. It's a really interesting film. She's got quite a dark story and also quite an unbelievable and bizarre story, but the film, weirdly, because her story is so crazy, but also it touches on issues like domestic abuse and things like that. And it is quite funny, but also quite powerful and quite disturbing at times. But the film does such a good job. The dark bits don't take away from the funny bits, and the funny bits don't take away from the dark bits. It really balances the tone very well. I believe they went through several directors before they found someone who really nailed the tone they wanted to go for this film. But it really did work. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, and I think it's on Amazon Prime in the UK at the moment. So yeah, I do need to actually watch that because yes, that I saw the trailer for that a few times and it does look great.
Yeah, it was good.
Right, and at number 4, I'm sure we all knew this was coming, although to be honest, you may have expected it higher. It's Avengers: Infinity War, the multicast mashup event in which, surely if you're listening to this podcast, you know what happens in Avengers Infinity.
Yeah.
The Avengers beat the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then Thanos kills half of them.
Yeah.
Spoilers. Partly for sheer towering scale of achievement, this is a great work. And the fact that it's actually sincerely good, like not just... I think the impressive part of this film is not just that they've managed to make it and it isn't a complete fuckfest, but it's actually good. In particular, CGI villain Thanos is actually good. Like actually engaging and actually memorable and actually one of the better Marvel villains, which is impressive considering he's a big purple thumb. Yeah. And yeah, it's a really great film full of memorable moments, much like, well, Aquaman in the last episode. It is very long but does not feel very long. For balancing this cast and pulling off this amount of CGI and somehow living up to its own hype, which was monumental. I mean, it's clearly part 1 of a 2-part film, and of course, part 2 is now called Avengers Endgame, which, if anyone cares about my opinion, I think is quite a boring title, but anyway, is coming out in a few months, and obviously I suspect posterity will judge this based on this whole enterprise, like Infinity War as well, based on whether it manages the landing. So, we'll see. But for now, the scale of achievement, the volume of fun, just for really successfully filming the ridiculous comic events of my youth, Number 4, Avengers Infinity War.
Again, I really like this film. I was worried that it was going to be a disaster after the problems with Age of Ultron, that it had too many characters and plot and they didn't hang together or have a proper role. But yeah, after getting on the directors who did Captain America Civil War and managed to make that work really well, they did a really good job here of creating a film that has, like, every character has their moment, their roles defined, the stories work really well, it's all balanced really well. Like you say, Thanos was a decent villain when he could have been just a kind of weird CGI thing for people to punch. And it basically is a huge achievement that this film wasn't Justice League, in the sense that, you know, a film with a CGI villain is evil for evil's sake, in which a selection of characters from other films punch.
Yeah.
But this film was good, and it also was impressive to see it in IMAX for my one BFI IMAX trip of the year.
Yeah.
So, for myself, number 4, it is Assassination Nation, a film that I described as woke Tarantino. It's
two words which definitely do not normally go together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a ultra-violent suburban teenage thriller about a group of high school girls who are going through the usual pressure of small-town American life. You know, trying to find their identity again, like having going to parties, boyfriends, and things like that. And obviously trying to keep up with all the pressures of kind of social media and our highly sexualized society, but also clearly characters who are intelligent and also quite complex. It's quite a diverse friendship group. But then events transpire that someone starts dumping huge amounts of personal information about prominent people in the town onto the internet and exposing all their secrets. And this leads to mob violence, ultimately targeted at these 4 teenage girls, and when they decide they've had enough of being shat on by society, they arm themselves and fight back in very bloody style. So it's a film that's kind of dark comedy, but also kind of quite socially relevant, but also I felt had a lot to say, but didn't just like smack you around the head with the, like, this is the bit when we try to say something about the youth today. And also, like, yeah, it wasn't, I know, it had something I think subtle to say about the effects of social media, digital technology, and our hypersexualized culture on everyone. It wasn't just kind of, it's bad, can't we go back to the 1950s? And yeah, it was just a hugely enjoyable film. I highly recommend it. It's been out in the cinema recently, might be coming to streaming platforms soon.
Yeah, I have not seen it, but again, I have heard many, many good reviews, including that one. And yeah, I would like to see it one day. Right, and number 3, and for regular listeners of these roundups, there's always one place on my top 5, which is basically the award given for service to Spider-Man. And like Sansa and his spider say, it's time for Spider-Man: Into the Spider-Verse, a animated film that came out quite recently and features a group of Spider-Men fighting an interdimensional threat. I talked about this in the previous episode, and we recorded the previous episode about 2 hours ago, so I definitely feel like it would be repetitive to go into it at a huge length, but yeah, this is a really, really fun, joyous, bouncy ride of a film that somehow manages to actually make all the serious moments land as well. Miles Morales, the new Spider-Man who was introduced in this film, has his sort of formative, tragic origin moments. Yeah, you feel for the kid, even a few minutes before you were laughing at the stupid cartoon pig, by which, of course, I mean Peter Porker, the spectacular Spider-Ham.
It still makes me crack up.
Yeah, I know. That's what I said. Yeah, but yeah, it's a really good, well-balanced film that somehow manages a level of comedy, like not just wisecracks, but proper on-screen hyperkinetic wackiness. There's a cutaway at one point to the middle-aged alternate version of Spider-Man just sitting in his costume in the shower sobbing, which is one of the funniest things I've seen all year. So yeah, I'm sure this is higher up my list than it would be for many because I like Spider-Man. But yes, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, if you have any affection for the Spider-Man character, it's just a really enthusiastic, lovable ode to the character. Well worth seeing.
Yeah, interesting that you've put on your top 5 list a film I've not seen, which is something of a first. But judging by Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse's reception on my Twitter feed, you're not the only person who really enjoyed it. And yeah, and because of your glowing recommendations, I can't wait to see this film. It'd be the sort of thing that probably would be quite nice to watch on Christmas Day with my sort of geeky family. They might not be out and streaming at that point, but
it only came out last week, so probably not.
No, unless they got some special deal. But anyway, maybe there'll be a good film to watch at some point in the next year. But yeah, I'm going to make that a priority for the year ahead. Track down the Spider-Man, Spider-Verse.
Yeah. No, I don't usually watch the animations, but yeah, this is one worth making an exception if you two have a snobby no animation rule, because yeah, it's really great.
For myself, my number 3 film of the year, this was A Quiet Place, which we covered for the podcast.
Oh yes. Narrowly missed my top 5. It was this versus Molly's Game for a good few minutes in my head.
Yeah, and then for your number 5 position.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this year's viral hit in the sense it's not a big sort of superhero film, famous remake, or, a historical epic. It's quite a low budget, quite focused film, but it's quite a low budget film and sort of very much based on the concept. It's only got a handful of characters, but it's absolutely brilliant. I highly recommend you see it. I won't say too much to spoil it, but it's set in sort of post-apocalyptic near future when if you make a sound above a whisper, a giant armoured praying mantis creature comes out of nowhere and kills you. Which seems silly, but it is actually terrifying.
Yeah, no, I did really enjoy this film as well. It's a fairly sort of simple, high-concept film, but it's also, quite short and tightly written, so it doesn't outstay its welcome. It just blasts quietly through you.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was really fun. And also, as someone who's currently rewatching The US Office, it's weird to see the lead character being played by John Krasinski, who is the sort of schlubby yet lovable Martin Freeman character in the US version, and who now apparently seems to be having a career resurgence as a sort of manly leading man in this and the Amazon Jack Ryan series. So good for him, I suppose. It's just weird for me.
Yeah. But yeah, obviously, because this film is very, very quiet, it does mean it's very, very tense. And they managed to sustain that tension throughout. It's very, very good. So if you're a fan of horror movies, turn the lights down, turn off your phone, because you don't want anything buzzing, disturbing you while you watch this film, and enjoy.
Is it me?
It is you, and we're down to the top 2.
Top 2. Well, my number 2 almost made this number 3 just for the synchronicity. But no, my number 2 is 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, a drama film featuring Frances McDormand as a woman who puts up a series of billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri to protest the sheriff's department failing to solve the murder of her daughter. And yeah, it's a really nicely written drama in which a bunch of characters go through a sort of series of, on the one hand, quite heightened dark comedy moments, but with enough resonance to make it not completely stupid. It's just the sort of film that I quite enjoy. It's fun, it sort of bops along, but there's enough sort of seriousness that I still feel like I'm, witnessing and feeling something. Yeah, it's a good film. Lots of good actors. I think this did quite well at the Oscars.
Yes, I believe that Frances McDormand won Best Actress and Sam Rockwell won Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah.
I believe.
And yeah, I Just thought this was a really good drama. I saw a few of the Oscar baits this year. The Shape of Water, spoilers, is not on my list anyway.
It's not on my list either.
I thought it was a sort of nice, interesting mood piece, and
it's good.
It's fun that he pulled it off, but yeah, it didn't sit with me that much. Whereas this did really leave me in a bit of a quiet, thoughtful haze afterwards, which is what I like from my films. So yeah, number 2 is number 3, Billboards.
Yep, I really like this film. It's excellent. I thought Frances McDormand did an amazing performance. Sam Rockwell and Woody Harrelson both of them got Best Supporting Actor nominations, and Sam Rockwell won at the Oscars. They both do amazing performances. Peter Dinklage as well. Like I, Tonya, it does, like I say, it's got some really grim, dark bits in it. It deals with, like, child murder, domestic abuse again, but also kind of got some really silly, like, funny bits, but it's so perfectly nails the tone so that the funny doesn't take away from the dark and the dark doesn't take away from the funny. Again, it must have been difficult to get the tone right, but they really succeeded in what is, I think, a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. As a fan of dark comedy, that's probably what I liked about it as well, to be honest.
Yeah, but it was very, very good. I'd highly recommend it. It's powerful and difficult to watch, but it's very good. My number 2 film of the year, which I think might be your number 1, but unless you choose something else. My number 2 film of the year is Black Panther, starring Chadwick Boseman, Michael B. Jordan, and an enormous cast of other people, directed by Ryan Coogler. Yeah, it's an excellent film. Not only, obviously, is it great to see a major superhero film with a person of colour in the lead, but also the world they created for Wakanda is just phenomenal. It's such a realised place. It feels like an actual place of history and like internal politics and its own culture, and it was just beautifully realised in terms of the visuals, but also had a great story around it, and I was just totally hooked by the whole thing. I can't wait till they do a sequel, and yeah, the film was just phenomenally good. Probably definitely the best superhero film of the year.
Yeah, no, I thought this was pretty great. It was as I mentioned when we were reviewing Aquaman, there seems to be a superhero subgenre of the King of the Hidden Nation, which both Thor and Aquaman sit in. But this is the first one, I think, really, to actually do a properly good job of A, making the Secret Nation thing seem even remotely credible, and B, actually filling it with interesting, memorable, likeable, good, cool characters. And the fact that they managed it all in the same film and put in a good plot and gave us a memorable new superhero. It's literally the only solid criticism I probably have of this film is I think the special effects during the battle at the end get a bit ropey. There are parts of it that do look a bit like a video game. But as an actual story, this was a great film. I mean, as I've said I'm sure while we were covering it, and in fact as I recommended to Alistair early in the game, I really, really liked the Christopher Priest Black Panther comics growing up, and therefore, yes, I was more than here for this film, which borrows quite heavily from them and various other Panther comics over the years. Yeah,
awesome. It was a very good film. I really enjoyed it, and proud to have it in the number 2 position. So, Nick, your favourite film of 2018?
Well, continuing my own sentence almost seamlessly, it's also Black Panther. Much as I enjoyed Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and much as I think Infinity War was a magnificent accomplishment, this is clearly the best superhero film of the year, as a huge, epic, sprawling adventure, which brought us into a whole new area of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, just as it was starting to feel like we'd maybe seen it all. And also, I think we talked a bit last week during Aquaman, again, about 2 hours ago, about the slight house styleness of the Marvel films, and this film hopefully shows that they're maybe starting to let their directors break out of that a bit, because this was a great progression and a great standalone piece. I thought it was impressive how many good and memorable characters there are, because normally, to be honest, they tend not to let too many characters in these films pull focus from the hero and the villain, but there are a lot of characters who you come away from this wanting to see more of, and it's really, really impressive. So yes, Black Panther, hooray, rounded off what was quite a good year for Marvel making superhero films, really. You really think they'd start, their iron grip on the culture would start to die off, but if they continue this level of quality, they'll probably be okay. Yeah,
they landed Avengers Infinity War, and also they had a huge success of Black Panther, and Ant-Man and the Wasp was good.
Yeah, if they land Captain Marvel and Avengers Endgame to the same degree next year,
plus more Spidey,
then fuck it, I guess they pretty much win. I am curious how much Endgame is going to be taken as everyone's chance to go, I guess that Marvel thing's over then. And what they're actually going to do after that. But anyway, this is not the Marvel discussion section. That was my number 1, Black Panther.
Yep, and as I said before, I really like that film. And my number 1 is, funny enough, one Nick's already mentioned, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I like we've got number 1 and number 2.
Yes.
It's the same.
Okay, that MFV top 3 is going to be a particularly hard negotiation.
It worked out quite well. As we've said, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, strong performances, great film. a tough watch, but it's funny, it's dark, a heck of a filmmaking accomplishment. I'm very pleased to have it as my favourite film of 2018. So this is the point when we merge our two lists to form the top 3 MFV films of the year.
So we had the same number 1 and number 2.
Yeah.
And all our other films were different.
Yeah, although your number 3 I haven't seen, which was Spider-Man Spider-Verse.
And I haven't seen Assassination Nation or I, Tonya. So that basically leaves what?
A Quiet Place, which was my number 3.
A Quiet Place and Molly's Game.
Yeah, and Molly's Game.
And I might be happy to give you A Quiet Place. I suspect Molly's Game might be a bit more idiosyncratic.
I'd accept A Quiet Place as a trade for having Black Panther number 1, Three Billboards number 2, Quiet Place number 3. Seems like a compromise.
Yes, we've done as everybody. We've negotiated.
Consensus.
The fight's postponed for another, possibly a year or possibly about half an hour, depending on how the TV section goes.
Yeah, cool.
Right, and now, lastly in the film section, Alistair, what was the worst film of the year, and why was it Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald?
As I said, that we might have some differences on our top films and TV shows for this year, but it looks like actually not as big a difference as we thought, though I controversially didn't put Avengers in my top 5. But I think we're going to agree on our worst film and probably worst TV show of the year. Worst film, Crimes of Grindelwald, Fantastic Beasts 2. As we said in our long and scathing review, I don't know who this film is for. I don't really know what it's about, even though I saw it. I don't know what the plot is. For some reason, it had posters that had Johnny Depp, Eddie Redmayne, and Jude Law on it. So you could be forgiven for thinking this is a film that was about Grindelwald, Newt Scamander, and Dumbledore. And obviously a lot of this film is not about that, and I have no idea why. And it was, other than the fact the plot didn't make any sense, it was weirdly humorless, it completely threw against a lot of the continuity of Harry Potter, it was quite dull to sit through, and it had Johnny Depp in it, which just leaves an awkward taste in the mouth.
Pretty much all of that. I honestly found this to be one of the slight upsets of the year for me, and that I kind of expected this to be a sort of all-right film that just struggled a bit with feeling a bit pointless and, again, having Johnny Depp in it. But instead, it's not just that, it's actually quite bad and incompetent. I don't really know what happened. But yeah, this film is honestly terrible. As I said in the episode we did about it about a month ago, I would say fans only, but even they don't seem to want it, so whatever. Nobody only.
Still laughing at Peter Porker, the Amazing Spider-Ham. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, I know. I like that we as a culture have reached a point where that's funny for everybody. It used to just be funny for me. Now the whole universe can enjoy the
Peter Porker, the Spider-Ham.
The sweet bacon of Peter Porker.
Oh dear. So now we come to the bit where we discuss our favourite television shows of 2018. But first, we're just going to ruminate on what a year it's been sat in front of the TV.
I mean, it seems like a lot of TV discourse at the moment seems to basically centre around which streaming service is currently winning. So
probably still Netflix.
But from a British perspective, this hasn't happened to quite the same extent yet.
Yeah.
But we are increasingly looking like we're headed towards some kind of siloing or splitting off of streaming services, like, the Disney Plus one, which, I mean, for all what people have talked about what's going to happen when the Disney streaming service launches, the one thing no one seems to be talking about is, will it actually launch in England? Because, I mean, the new DC Universe streaming service has been actually up and running for about 3 or 4 months now, and it's not available here. The one show they broadcast is going up on Netflix next month instead.
Right.
For all the people talk about these individual streaming services that are coming, it may not even affect us.
I think Disney would be mad to not launch, a product that's designed for the English-speaking world in one of the largest markets in the English-speaking world that isn't America. But who knows, maybe. I mean, there's been various attempts for things like the BBC to move into the streaming space with their new version of BBC Three that's kind of direct to the BBC iPlayer content. And obviously, Disney this year have been cancelling a lot of the shows they have on Netflix, probably in preparation for the launch of their own platform. They've also got a Star Wars TV show coming soon, which, to be honest, although it's cynical, but I have to admit it, I probably would sign up to a Disney Plus platform just to watch the Star Wars TV show. And if there's going to be some Marvel stuff in there as well, possibly a Winter Soldier TV show, then that might be good.
Yeah, this does seem to be the biggest single example, at least outside of theme parks, of Disney really flexing their cultural muscles in a big way. It's like, look, we've got the Star Wars, we've got the Marvel. Maybe they'll put some of the animation on there as well. It's like, look, here is your culture, all of it in one place.
Yeah.
You'll probably want to subscribe, won't you?
You one-stop shop for everything, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially the way that they're reportedly going to be bringing, as you just sort of mentioned, some of the movie cast over for the Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's one for people, including me, have talked a bit about how TV seems to increasingly be the primary form of moving picture content, and are movies still relevant anymore?
Yeah.
So
the dominant medium or cultural medium of this century is the kind of, the serialized TV show. I would say, whereas the dominant art form of the previous century probably was the cinema.
Yeah, whereas TV is now the main thing. Obviously, streaming services are now it. I mean, I'm assuming we've probably still got a few more years before live broadcast TV gives up the ghost. But I don't know. Part of me feels like, at what point will someone just go, like the BBC maybe, here, or whatever the US infrastructure alternative is, PBS or something, conclude, okay, there's a degree to which it's becoming pointless to continue to provide live broadcast TV. We'll just replace it with some sort of live accessible streaming network.
I think over time what will happen is that broadcast TV will blend into the internet and it will seamlessly kind of transition from one to the other. Our lives will just get more and more online. We already have smart TVs, Chromecasts and Amazon Fire Sticks. The line between television and the internet will just become blurred to the point that there really is no distinction.
Well, exactly, but at what point will BBC just go, right, okay, we're going to up our investment in iPlayer infrastructure and in such a way we can provide the iPlayer to all households rather than providing live broadcast TV?
I mean, I don't know. It's in the BBC's charter to provide news, for example, which is they have to, public information.
Yeah, but I guess you could, but that doesn't mean you need to start providing scheduled shows. That just means you need to have an ongoing news service or an ongoing news network and a button on your new public access iPlayer that turns it on.
Yeah, I guess.
If theoretically everyone can access it. I mean, I know that'll... I suspect the main thing standing in the way of that is I imagine not everyone has the internet access necessary to get it, and I guess it's probably against the BBC's charter to start a service that you have to pay for an internet subscription to get. But I don't know what the way around that is.
Well, it'll just happen, I guess, if smart technology continues to evolve, like say to the point when it gets to the point that smart TVs are ubiquitous as television, then the line between the internet and not the internet will blur to a point of no distinction, and the line between smart and dumb devices will also blur to the point when there's no distinction. So, but yeah, the future seems to be the streaming service. Netflix seem pretty hegemonic in their dominance. I mean, I haven't really watched any Amazon Prime shows this year. I'm trying to think if there's any one. I do like Amazon Prime for films, actually. They have a pretty good selection of film, including especially if you're willing to pay a couple of pounds to buy something digitally, you can pretty much get any film that you want straight away, which I quite like. But there are no Amazon Prime TV shows in my top 5 TV shows of the year. There are 3 things that I watched on Netflix, and I think some of them are Netflix own productions and some of them are things just Netflix distributes in the UK. But I do think that Netflix is pretty hegemonic, and the only thing that could challenge the domination of Netflix would be Disney.
Yeah, I think Amazon original TV is one of their big Achilles heels, and they seem unable to make it work. I think one of the only Amazon original productions I've watched was the first series of Man in the High Castle, and as we discussed way back in the past,
you didn't like it.
I hated it.
You made it your worst film of the year, possibly last year of the year.
I think
worst TV show of the year.
It definitely was my worst TV show of the year I watched it, because I did not like that.
Yeah.
You're not still watching it then, 'cause it's still going, isn't it?
I haven't watched it since the first series, although I do have a vague plan to go back to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a show called The Marvellous Ms. Maisel, which I gather is meant to be good, and I think I may end up watching.
My partner, she likes that show.
That is the one that Amazon show, possibly in the whole history of the service, I've heard anything resembling good buzz about.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I do occasionally go on there, because they have, I think, maybe in the last year or so, stepped up their purchasing of interesting other shows, like other people's US shows. Like, I think they now have Angel and Buffy on Prime. They've got the US Office, which I'm currently watching. So I am currently logging into Amazon Prime Video most days to watch The Office.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think Amazon Prime seems to be a very good place to go and watch other people's content. From some other pop culture podcasts I listen to, I know that Amazon Prime is quite a good place to get interesting foreign language shows that aren't necessarily on Netflix. Like, there's a German show on Amazon Prime called The Dark. I think it's called The Dark, which I've been meaning to watch for ages. It's supposed to be a good science fiction show. But yeah, Amazon just seems to be quite good at a place to, I guess because of their power being like a behemoth, they're quite good at kind of going for breadth but what they produce themselves doesn't seem to be that good. But they are a good one-stop shop for what shall I watch tonight.
Oh, Preacher. They have Preacher as well. I do watch that.
Oh, they have Preacher, yeah.
But yeah, I think in some ways that's them stealing a bit of Netflix's old remit. Because part of the appeal of Netflix used to be you can get loads of random shows from loads of people.
Yeah.
And I get the feeling they're sort of moving away from that in favour of their own content or stuff they have exclusively.
Yeah.
So maybe Amazon have decided to start snatching that stuff up. And if so, that may well be better for them going forward. I don't know. I mean, certainly I think the Netflix Marvel divorce, which is one of the aspects of streaming service wars that affects me most, seems to be powered partly by Marvel wanting to grab their rights back, or take content away from a rival streaming platform, and partly powered by Netflix not wanting to have things which are co-owned by other studios. I think the shows they continue making are things that they basically own entirely.
And they both agreed that they want to see other people.
It's a semi-amicable divorce from the corporate perspective, but tough shit for anyone who worked on or liked those shows. We'll just have to see whether they find another home going forward. I know everyone originally said, they're totally going to the Disney Plus, but no one seems actually sure that's going to happen now.
It does appear, I did read somewhere, although nothing's confirmed until it happens, but that Netflix aren't going to, make another Daredevil series with the same, Matt Murdock, Foggy Nelson and Karen Page, and there's not going to be another Luke Cage series. They might use those characters, I suppose, but they're not going to just basically pick up where the current show's left off. This is the end for that incarnation of, well, so far, Daredevil, Luke Cage and Iron Fist, and we can assume sometime next year, Jessica Jones and the Punisher as well.
I am assuming, yes. At some point next year, Jessica Jones and the Punisher will get the exact same treatment the others have had, which is the new season has been thrown out there with a bare minimum of promotion. People get a couple of months to watch it, and then the axe falls. Yeah. That seems fairly likely. I think the Punisher's coming out in January, actually, so we may have to deal with that soon.
That might be on the next episode, or one of the episodes coming up soon.
Jesus. But yeah, it's a shame in some ways, because I think although the plotting's sometimes been a bit ropey on those shows, with the slight exception of Iron Fist, I think the casting on the main characters has been one of the big strengths. The other four lead actors are, I think,
very good.
Become quite iconic depictions of those characters. I think particularly losing Charlie Cox as Daredevil, or Mike Colter as Luke Cage, or I'm about to just list them all, or Kristen Ritter as Jessica Jones, or, to be honest, kind of especially John Bernthal as the Punisher.
Yeah. They're all fairly iconic.
I mean, honestly, I would absolutely... Yeah, if I were Marvel, I would be breaking my lawyers against the wall trying to find a way to get John Bernthal back as the Punisher. Because he is iconic in that part. But yeah, anyway, never mind, it's dead for now, probably.
The interesting thing, will they feature in any of our top fives? They may do, they may not. Wait with bated breath.
Yes, it's probably time to do that, isn't it? And I think I went first on the films, so do you want to...
I'm going to go first on the television.
Okay.
So, at number 5, my 5th favourite TV show in 2018 is a show I watched on Netflix, and I believe it's a Netflix production. It's technically not finished its series, but I have seen all the episodes that have been released in 2018. It's The Good Place, Series 3. I've enjoyed this show very much. As a lot of people have pointed out, third series is not as good as possibly the first or the second series, but I know that is hardly a criticism when the show is just this good. It's funny, it's really, really intelligent. I like the fact that it actually makes complex points about moral philosophy, the core premise of the show, and it's not as dull as that or pretentious as that makes it sound. It's got great characters, great chemistry between the main parts. Yeah, especially Kirsten Bell and Ted Danson, I think, are really, really good. Yeah, it's I've enjoyed the show a lot. I find it hilarious. Excellent cameos this year, including Stephen Merchant and the guy who played Chuck in Better Call Saul. So, I continue to find this show hilarious, and I enjoyed the third series.
It is not in my top 5 because I watch a lot of TV and it's a very competitive top 5 this year. But I do also really like this show. I do agree the third season has become... I think one critic I follow described it as a bit sweaty, in that it seems increasingly like it's just desperately scrabbling around. And I don't disagree with that as a point. I don't know. I don't know whether it's whether they are making it up as they go along, or whether they perhaps bought into their own hype about, how exciting the constant changes of status quo are, and now they just feel they need to keep doing things, then chucking them out at a ridiculous speed. I'm not really sure, but nonetheless, there is something a bit not as smooth and not as beautifully elegant feeling about season 3, which I find a bit off-putting. But nonetheless, it is still a very funny, very warm show, and I will definitely be continuing to watch it.
Right. So, Nick, what is your fifth favourite show?
My fifth favourite show is one we did cover on the podcast. It is the second season of Legion, the surreal superhero show featuring Dan Stevens as the titular Legion as he goes through what increasingly looks like it might be a bit of a dark turn during his climactic showdown with Amal Farouk, the Shadow King. This show is not as high on my list as it was last year, as I felt the second season had a tiny bit of pacing issues, but nonetheless it's still the sort of show I very much like, a sort of comedy-drama hybrid with some exciting storytelling choices, some surreal twists, a few very interesting surreal gimmick episodes, and yeah, I thought this was a really great bit of TV, and yes, the only reason it's as low down as number 5 is, as I say, it's a competitive year.
Wow, so interesting it is a competitive year, because I really like this show. It's really, really good. Like I say, I like the fact that it's just so surreal and odd, and they've kind of made a show, again, all about being inside the head of someone with severe mental health issues. They've used sort of surrealism and sort of abstract filmmaking techniques to really bring to life what it is like to be inside someone's head. And yeah, the show is infinitely watchable, so I really like it as well. So it's your fifth favourite show of the year.
And what is your fourth?
My fourth favourite show of the year is another Netflix one, and another one we covered on the podcast. It is The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Oh, okay.
The recent remake of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, you'll remember from our childhood. Also, I think, based on the character from Archie Comics. Nick will correct me if I'm wrong.
You are right on this occasion.
Yes, the Archie Publishing House. Starring Kernan Shipka, previously seen in Mad Men, another favourite show of mine, as a teenage witch deciding whether she wants to be, fully sign up to Satanism and everything it involves. Yeah, again, a show that kind of can be quite dark, can be quite funny, can be kind of quite both at the same time. It's gory, it's violent, it's quite intense. I enjoyed watching it for the podcast. It's a good show.
Yeah, not on my top 5 actually, although bubbling under very, very much. It probably would have made it just about if I'd been doing a full top 10. It's a fun show. I think the plot's sometimes a bit loose, but the aesthetic, the sort of goth, Satan, camp witch thing is very, very watchable. And as we said during the review we did of it, Michelle Gomez in particular is all over this aesthetic, so much that she almost manages to overact in this ridiculous TV show. But yeah, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is, if you're into that sort of goth camp aesthetic, is 100% worth watching, and I look forward to sitting down for the Christmas special that they've now released.
So, what was your fourth favourite show?
My fourth favourite show was one that we did not cover on the podcast ourselves, but was discussed at moderate length in the filler bonus separate yet together episode that we did in the middle of the summer. This is Westworld.
Oh.
The robot cowboy, what's real, what's not, what's a story, what's not show that HBO made this year, the second season. And yeah, I really like this. It seems to be a bit of a acquired taste chalk and cheese show where people seem to either be really into it or find it a bit pretentious and dull. And although this series had a slightly slow start, I still really liked it. I felt like it really built towards a great big hobbling emotional moment, and it's got a lot of, I don't know, I guess what people always call Lost-esque moments, but I always feel a bit bad using that phrase because I have not seen Lost. But yeah, a lot of hints at a wider mythology that you hope will soon be realised. But I think what's nice about this is that it brought everything together at the end to the extent that even if the mythology turns out to be bollocks, this story still works. So yeah, I really like Westworld, and for what it's worth, if you are on the fence about it or if you haven't yet seen season 2, give it a go. It's very good. And you know, now that Game of Thrones is finishing, we'll need another big, expensive, high-concept HBO drama.
So this is a show that I watched the first episode of and didn't really like and haven't watched much since. But people really rave about it, so maybe I should give it a second chance.
Do it now.
Oh, podcast.
Yes, Westworld. Alistair, what's your next one?
So, in position number 3, my third favourite TV show of 2018 was Better Call Saul, starring Bob Odenkirk as Saul Goodman, also known as Jimmy McGill, the lawyer, the dodgy lawyer from Breaking Bad, now in his own prequel show. Again, this was my second favourite show of last year, and I think it might have been on my list from the year before. So a show I do really, really like. One of my highlights of the year. And also, the third Netflix show on the list, or at least the third thing that I watched on Netflix, because in the UK it's Better Call Saul's on Netflix. Yeah, Bob Odenkirk is great in the role. They move the character along. He's now, I think, finishes the series, he's going to practice law under the name Saul Goodman and be a criminal lawyer rather than an elderly lawyer, as he was before, as in a lawyer for the elderly, not an elderly man who's a lawyer. And they also wrapped up the plot line of what happened to his brother Chuck, which I won't spoil if you haven't seen. Yeah, I really like the show. It's a show that isn't full of sort of explosions and bangs and big set pieces. It's people sort of quietly get on with their life, but there's an enormous amount of drama in it, and the characters are really likeable, and it clearly has its own story that it wants to tell. It's not just manoeuvring the characters into the position that they were in at the beginning of Breaking Bad, which is a problem with a lot of prequels, because watching that fundamentally lacks tension. It's got its own story that's very different to the Breaking Bad story. So I've been greatly enjoying the show, and the 4th series didn't disappoint.
Yep, I too liked Better Call Saul. In fact, I'll use this to segue expertly into the fact that my number 3 is also Better Call Saul.
Oh, excellent. Consensus.
Yes, we have reached 1 point of consensus. But yes, I thought it was a good year this year. I don't think it was quite Season 3 good. I think Season 3 will remain the high point to date of Better Call Saul for me.
I agree with that, yeah.
Because there were some storylines that perhaps didn't feel like they were quite thumping on all levels, like the Mike storyline this year, although it was quite interesting and exciting and entertaining. That did get a bit into prequel, we're going to show you how they made the thing territory. It's like, but I don't care how they made the thing. It was okay just to know the thing existed.
Yeah.
I already knew he dug a hole. But that storyline was still watchable on sheer actor charisma, even if I did feel it was slightly pointless. And the rest of it was pretty great. So yeah, Better Call Saul Series 4. If you're, at this point, it's Season 4 of a show, you're either watching it or you're not. But it's still doing really well, and I'm interested to see how much longer it's got to go, because obviously next year is Season 5, which is where a lot of shows in this sort of premium telly bracket start to consider wrapping up. And obviously also, Saul has finally become Saul, so they're getting towards the point where you'd think they'd wrap up.
Because the big question with the show is whether they're going to do plot stuff set after Breaking Bad, or are they just going to leave it with, taking it to the beginning of Breaking Bad and stopping there. But yeah, probably Series 5 should wrap up any plot they have left that's in the pre-Breaking Bad time span.
I don't know. I never really had any sense of how long Saul Goodman had been operating before Breaking Bad happened. So yeah, I suppose theoretically they could run for a few years, but on the other hand, events in the other area of the storyline, the one I just mentioned, the Gus Mike Hole era, suggest they're getting quite close to Breaking Bad now. These are events that lead in some ways directly into Breaking Bad. So yeah, I suspect by the end of Season 5 we may well have an idea of exactly how this is going into that, as they say in sex education. Anyway, on that
into the hole
creepy note, Alistair, what's your number 2?
Another thing that comes out of a hole.
Oh, God's sake.
That was probably too far.
I'm leaving it.
Okay, my second favourite TV show of 2018 was not something I watched on Netflix. It was, and in fact, it wasn't even something that was American. Well, sort of is American, a bit. Anyway, it's Killing Eve, spy drama, starring Sandra Oh as a woman recruited by MI6 to track down Villanelle, a international assassin played by Jodie Comer. Played expertly, I must say. It was, this show again was possibly one of the viral hits of this year. It was advertised on the side of buses, but, it wasn't a big superhero TV show or action spectacle like Game of Thrones. So it was something of a surprise hit. Also, I guess, been an interesting change in that it was a show with 2 women in the main characters. Again, a spy drama, somewhat slightly different. But yeah, it was a fantastic roller coaster action TV show with some great characters. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I liked this as well. It was smart, it was witty, it was fast moving. It zigged and zagged in interesting directions. The performances in particular, especially as you say, Jodie Comer, were pretty great. Yeah, I found this pretty seamless.
Nice.
It's a really good show. Is it still on iPlayer? I can't remember, but yeah, check it out.
Yeah. So Nick, what was your second favourite show of 2018?
Right, I'm going to go entirely off book now. This is something we didn't cover on the podcast, although connections. This is Glow, the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, which is, well, to bring it back to a theme Alistair's had, a Netflix show. In fact, only 2 of my top 5 have been things that have been on Netflix. So, I'm open-minded. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Glow is a show from the same production house, although I think different actual showrunners, to Orange is the New Black, long-standing podcast favourite. And yeah, this is a historical, a set in the past story about the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling show, which really existed and features Alison Brie as a struggling actress who joins the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling looking for a gig and, like a character at a TV show, finds the family she so desperately wanted, helped by manager, coach, and weird, unsuitable father figure Mark Maron. So yeah, it's just a really nice show. It's one of these shows where the whole ensemble gels. There's a few lead characters you really like, and everyone else has their bit, which they do really well, and is really funny and endearing, and eventually gets to come to the forefront and have their bits subverted. They do that comedy beat I quite enjoy from Orange is the New Black, where they're trying to achieve something and are just thwarted by the fact that one of the characters is an idiot blabbering about something pointless. So yeah, it's just a really fun, fresh-feeling show. There's a few episodes, in particular the second season, which aired this year, which are full-on hardcore emotional drama. Some really bad things happen to some beloved characters, and it's just heart-wrenching. So yeah, it's a really great show, and if you haven't seen it, it's only 2 seasons, half-hour episodes, so not too heavy. Especially if you like Orange is the New Black, which is of course finishing in the coming year. So yes, this could fill the Orange is the New Black shaped hole in your life.
I haven't seen it, but it's been strongly recommended to me by quite a lot of people, so I should definitely make time for this.
Yes, you should. Number
1, my favourite TV show of 2018. It's one that Nick's already mentioned. It's Legion.
Ah, yes, they love it.
I love it. Sometimes I do feel like this is a show that's been made specifically for me in that, I don't know, it's really surreal and cerebral, and has like some great characters and just some interesting. I don't know. I just find it absolutely fascinating, like how they take you inside the main character's head, and also the interesting developments in this series of him sort of basically kind of becoming a villain, or at least kind of spinning off into some pretty morally dubious territory.
Yeah, and obviously I covered Legion earlier, and yeah, although I didn't feel this season as much as the previous one. It is a pretty expertly made TV show. It has that sort of air of auteur-driven uniqueness that you just can't replicate, really. It's always great when you get a show that has this kind of unique vision. And to be honest, it's always quite odd when that show is based on a Marvel comic. I say this as someone who obviously strongly endorses comic adaptations, but nonetheless, it does always impress me when someone takes adaptation material and rather than making a nice, fun mainstream show, makes something this idiosyncratic and weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, I too love Legion.
It's very good, yeah. I'm surprised it's lasted as long as it had, that they haven't, basically, network hasn't got cold feet and cancelled it. But coming back for a 3rd series, which I didn't expect, so yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, as we said when we covered it earlier in the year, I do kind of half expect the 3rd season to be a planned conclusion and just leave it as a trilogy. But to be honest, with something this odd, I'm not sure dragging it on forever is a good idea anyway. So if this is the 3rd and final, I'd take it.
Anyway, Nick, what is your favourite TV show?
Well, in keeping, it is also something that's already been mentioned. It is the BBC spy extravaganza Killing Eve, in which Sandra Oh and Jodie Comer do some things that Alistair's already mentioned. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just a really fun, likeable, exciting show. I enjoyed it quite a lot. I think I've already said I enjoyed it quite a lot when I was replying to Alistair, but yeah, this is definitely the TV breakout hit of the year. Another win from Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who of course also wrote and starred in Fleabag. The only slight downer on the Killing Eve party is that Phoebe Waller-Bridge is, I think, not coming back as showrunner for season 2, so it is a shame. Or so we'll get, I don't know, maybe someone will come on and do something new and different. Maybe we'll get some new person doing a Phoebe Waller-Bridge impression. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, the plus side, she's obviously going on to do other things, including, I believe, the 2nd series of Fleabag. Yeah. So, this may well be a bit of a one and done for Killing Eve in our top 5 if the 2nd series turns out to be a pale imitation. But for now, this for me was number 1. This was a very new, exciting show, which I enjoyed quite a lot.
Nice. Great. So we've got quite a consensus there. I must say I did really like Killing Eve. So I think that kind of got to be our number 1 show of the year.
Yeah, I think, Killing Eve was number 1.
But we both agreed on Better Call Saul as number 3.
Legion was your number 1 and my number 5. I do really like Legion, and I do enjoy placing superheroes above other things. So, do you want to put Legion at number 2 and then Better Call Saul at number 3?
Yeah, I can accept that. Yeah.
Okay.
Consensus has been reached again.
Okay, sure. The fight will wait till next year.
Our top TV shows of the year. Number 1, Killing Eve. Number 2, Legion. Number 3, Better Call Saul. And just to follow up on one of our best films of the year, which were number 1, Black Panther. Number 2, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. And number 3, A Quiet Place. And now, finally, worst TV show of the year.
I'll go. I do have a consensus, but I also have a bit of a weird tie in that on the one hand, I found Jessica Jones Season 2 really fucking disappointing. I really didn't think it was at all great compared to the first one. And so I very nearly said that just on principle, just because that was probably the TV show I had the strongest negative reaction to this year. But on the other hand, I cannot pretend it was as actually bad as Disenchantment, which is my actual worst TV show of the year.
All right. Disenchantment. I thought it was all right. I wouldn't say it's the worst TV show of the year. I quite like the beginning and the end, but it did go a bit slow and there was some filler in the middle. But I don't know, I thought it was It's certainly not the worst TV show of the year.
I mean, maybe I just didn't watch enough garbage. I surveyed the list of things I'd seen and could not see anything I liked as least. As little?
That's Disenchanted.
Okay, well, you said you thought we'd agree, so...
Well, yeah.
Well, oh god, I'm now terrified. I'm about to find out, but I've forgotten something truly abominable, and we're going to have to re-record this segment. But hit me.
No, it's one you've already mentioned. My worst TV show of the year was Jessica Jones Series 2, which obviously was a huge disappointment after Jessica Jones Series 1, which I really liked and thought was excellent. This year they seem to have changed. The characters didn't make much sense, especially the character of Trish kind of seemed to become a different person, and the plot was kind of dull and tedious, and to be honest, it was one of those shows when watching it became a bit of a chore. And it's hard for me to say because of how much I enjoyed Jessica Jones Series 1, but maybe it's just they've had a bad year. Hopefully the third series will tie it all together.
Yeah, I think the third series, they'll probably... I don't know. Firstly, as we said earlier, they're almost definitely going to get cancelled about a month after the third season airs.
Yeah.
So you've got to hope they've at least given it an ending. I mean, based on Daredevil. I mean, Daredevil basically ended season 2 on a cliffhanger and then gave what was at least a moderately final ending at the end of season 3. So hopefully Jessica Jones will do something similar.
Yeah.
I don't know. As I say, I disliked Jessica Jones enough to mention it. But on the other hand, the few critical ethics I have throbbing at the back of my head felt vaguely bad pretending I actually thought it was worse than Disenchantment. Because I didn't. But it was certainly the thing I liked least. So maybe I should have gone with my subjectivity. But yeah, Jessica Jones season 2 was amazingly disappointing, and I don't know what happened there really. I mean, they did the one good story from the comics, or at least the one big prominent major story in season 1.
So they had nothing else to do.
Well, I mean, yeah, but they are allegedly writers. You'd think they'd hope they'd be able to come up with something. It's not as if a detective in a city with superpowers isn't something you'd come up with a story for.
Yeah, but they managed to mess it up.
Okay. Okay, and that was 2018 on Moderate Fantasy Violence. Now we can all move on with our lives, or at least 2019, which will hopefully be better. I'll be honest, we're recording this in mid-December, so who knows what state the world will be in by the time we finally release it. But anyway, we've been Moderate Fantasy Violence. You can find more from us on the internet at moderatefantasyviolence.com, where you can also read further articles and the occasional deleted bit of podcast and such. And we should also have our reviews of the year in film and TV articles up, which will, in my case certainly, look a lot like the list I just gave, except it'll be a top 10, so it'll be longer. And you could also, if you enjoyed this, and we've picked up a few listeners recently according to our stats, which I refresh at least once a day. So yeah, if you feel like going to iTunes or other podcast outlets and giving us a nice review, then that would be very much appreciated. Cheers.
You can also find us on social media, where you can get updates about the show. We're on Twitter at MFV Podcast, and we're on Facebook, which you can find by searching Moderate Fantasy Violence. I've been Alistair Ball. You can find me on Twitter by searching for @AlistairJRBall. You can also find more of my writing at redtrainblog.com.
And I've been Nick Bryan. You can find me on the internet at nickbryan.com, where there might even be news of my new comic, which is coming out in early February. The cycle never stops. And there'll definitely have been at least some art posted if you go to my Twitter at @NickMB. And there we go. Thank you very much. We will see you again in a couple of weeks in mid-January when we will be reviewing an as yet undecided thing. So join us here for that. And in the meantime, we hope you had a happy new year. Bye-bye.
Bye.
It's a sort of literary sci-fi book about an alien child who falls to Earth and is adopted by a Earth couple in need of love. Sorry, that's a bad phrase.
It's all about how you say it. A couple in need of love.